Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, August 3rd, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, in our box office segment, we'll hear from Variety's Rebecca Rubin on what was nothing less than an extraordinary weekend at the box office, with all kinds of records breaking. Thanks to the stupendous opening of Sony Pictures' Spider-Man Brand New Day and Universal's The Odyssey hanging tough in Weekend 3. These incredible numbers are such welcome news. But before we get to all of that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Don't miss Rebecca Rubin's interview with Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman. He takes a victory lap for Spider-Man Brand New Day, and he acknowledges the sting of losing the Cliff Booth movie to Netflix. It's an enlightening read. NBC News is launching more and more streaming programs now that it is separated from MS Now and CNBC. As of today, the NBC News Now streaming platform is launching a 2-hour daily business program, Current with Christine Romans. It will tackle all the day's big business headlines and stream on NBC News Now from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time. French President Emmanuel Macron is convening big Hollywood names for a summit on the future of film. The invitees include Ted Sarandos, Donna Langley, Dana Walden, and Tom Rothman. They will all gather September 7th in the medieval hilltop village of St. Paul de Vence on September 7th. The Lumiere Summit is being billed as a landmark international event to discuss AI, theatrical exhibition, film financing, and the future of independent film. My colleague Elsa Keslasi in Paris has all the details. My colleague Joe Otterson scooped that Amazon is developing a Warhammer 40,000 animated event series. It's in the works from MGM Studios, Blur Studios, and Games Workshop. It will be a companion to the Warhammer 40,000 live-action series starring Henry Cavill that is also in development at Amazon. All of these stories and so much more can be found at Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. If it's Monday, we're talking box office with Variety's box office chief, Rebecca Rubin. This weekend was like the Super Bowl for the multiplexes. Rebecca Rubin, thank you for joining me for What a Box Office Weekend to Discuss.
Thank you for having me. And yes, this was definitely one for the record books, so a very fun weekend to be covering the box office.
You've been reporting there've been so much anticipation, but, a $355 million domestic opening. The rest of the world brought it to nearly $1 billion. These are eye-watering numbers. One of the stats that stood out to me in your story was 2021 Spider-Man No Way Home opened to $260 million. Now, it's a different box office environment, but still, that is an incredible anticipation and turnout for this movie. Nearly 100 million more domestically. Rebecca, looking just domestically, what drove that? What drove this stampede to the turnstiles?
Well, just to note, because you bring up a good point, the last Spider-Man movie was released in late 2021, and it was right about when the vaccines were becoming more available, but there was a sense that people weren't returning to the movies in large numbers. What was so significant about that film is even with all of these pandemic-induced obstacles, it had the second highest grossing domestic opening weekend of all time. So those numbers weren't just good for pandemic times, they were good for all-time box office stats. And that is a true testament to just, I think, the popularity of Spider-Man. And if you remember, that film reunited all of the Spider-Men who have graced the screen, Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. So hype was very high. People were wondering, can this new film, Brand New Day, even live up to something like that? Because the prior film was a real crossover event that got people excited in a way that very few expected. And so the answer, of course, is yes. I think that considering the prior film ended on this massive cliffhanger. Peter Parker made the decision to erase himself from everyone's memory. It set up a really clear narrative and hook for this new film. People knew exactly what they were going to see. And so I think that generated a lot of excitement. And Sony was really marketing this as a new chapter, a new era. It was called Brand New Day.
Right. So it's right there in the title.
It's right there in the title because we've seen that there is definitely a lot of fatigue with these comic book movies. And I think the takeaway from all of this is not that people are tired of superhero movies. It's just that they don't want more of the same. And so with the marketing of this film, Sony was really trying to signal this is a new dawn, a new era, and it's not going to be more of the same. And I'll just say one more thing, that to put these numbers in context, only 2 movies in history, this movie and Avengers Endgame, have made more than $300 million in a single weekend. So these films are just far and above the 3rd biggest opening weekend, just to speak to how significantly these films have overperformed.
Even though Spider-Man Brand New Day is a Sony Pictures release, it will all accrue to the Marvel bottom line. With Spider-Man, Sony has always been very careful in their stewardship of this Marvel character. They definitely don't overexpose Spider-Man. They know that this is such a precious resource.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but it has been 5 years since the last movie, and everybody I talk to can't believe it's been that long. But to your point, I think that makes it feel like we have actually waited and there's pent-up demand for this character. And then on top of that, this helps the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Marvel has another very big movie, Avengers Doomsday, coming in December. And so certainly the goodwill for this character and the excitement for this movie is going to contribute a massive turnout for Avengers Doomsday when it comes around the holidays.
Let me ask you about the Tom Holland and Zendaya factor, because they are certainly one of the couples of the moment. Do you think the trajectory of their love story, they got married, the whole thing, do you think that fed some of the interest in Spider-Man?
I think it can't hurt. People love this couple. They love these characters, but then they love the actors who are playing them. And the fact that a love story is integral to the movie, and that is something that we see in real life as well, definitely makes it all the more fun. And of course, this is a very big weekend for Tom Holland and Zendaya because they were also in the Odyssey. And that movie has been holding up very well, even in the wake of Spider-Man having such a massive turnout. And this weekend was especially significant because it was the largest collective weekend in the history of the box office. And it's one of 2 weekends ever to have over 400 million earned in a single weekend. And so that is great news for theaters. It means so many people were going to the movies. They were seeing trailers for upcoming releases. But Tom Holland and Zendaya, it's very rare that I think 2 actors would be. It's just a coincidence that 2 actors are in both of these movies that are just continuing to defy expectations.
The Odyssey being clearly an Oscar contender, Spider-Man being the best of its breed. Like, these are great movies. I have no doubt, Rebecca, that premium large format played a big part given the wide scope of Spidey's adventures.
It did. What actually is pretty interesting is that IMAX, which we've talked about a ton, the most ubiquitous of the premium large formats, is only playing the Odyssey for 3 weekends. And so that meant that Spider-Man Brand New Day did not play on any IMAX screens in the US. And so it just shows it didn't even need those auditoriums, which the tickets are more expensive, to shatter these records. But that being said, it was able to play on plenty of other premium large formats like Dolby and 4DX and ScreenX, and those companies all reported a record turnout for this film. And Spider-Man did play in a few territories in Asia because the Odyssey has not yet released there. And so it had a really large turnout in China, Japan, and South Korea. And so IMAX actually just announced this morning that Spider-Man will be playing on some IMAX screens starting this week. And so it's only going to continue to rise and grow from here.
Let me ask you about Spider-Man Brand New Day internationally. Was China one of the biggest overseas markets? Where did the movie really do well outside the US?
Yeah, it did extremely well overseas. It made $572 million from 66 international markets, and China was far and away the biggest. It opened to $121 million, which is very significant because China as a market has been very, very hit or miss for Hollywood movies since the pandemic. And the prior Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, didn't even get a release in China. And that was a missed opportunity because the conventional wisdom says that the prior Spider-Man movie would have surpassed $2 billion if it were able to play in China. So the fact that this film isn't just playing in China, but is doing very well there already sets up the film for a even bigger box office tally. Of course, it has this massive start, so there's really no telling how high grosses will go, but the turnout in China is very encouraging, very promising. They weren't sure how it was going to perform there just because it had been such a long gap. The movie before the 2021 release came out in 2019, so it had really been a long time since this character had played in China, but clearly still resonates in a big way.
So Spider-Man Brand New Day was the first real competition for the Odyssey. How did the Odyssey hold up in weekend 3?
Even with all of this competition, it's clear that the demand for the Odyssey is so significant because it made $51 million domestically in its third weekend of release, which, just for context, a movie like this, a 3-hour R-rated epic, if it made $51 million in its opening weekend, I think that would be pretty significant.
We'd be hailing it as a win for an adult costume sword and sandal drama.
So the fact that it's making that in its third weekend of release is just incredible, speaking to the staying power of this film. And after just 3 weekends in theaters, this movie has made $911 million worldwide. It's about to cross the $1 billion mark. It has outgrossed Oppenheimer domestically. It will soon outgross it globally, and it's just continuing to shatter all expectations. So doing very significant business even in the wake of such a big blockbuster. And I think the takeaway for movie theaters and for Hollywood is that if there are 2 movies that people really want to see, they will make time to go to both. And that has always been a concern post-COVID, not wanting to cannibalize other movies because people were so concerned whether or not audiences were wanting to go back. And this definitely shows that when the product is there, people are excited to go.
August is coming in like a lion at the box office, which once again is fabulous. I'm running out of positive superlatives here. Was there anything else this weekend, anything that bubbled up of note to you, and anything we should watch for next weekend?
I think what will just be fun to watch is the staying power of Spider-Man Brand New Day and the Odyssey. Those films will really have free reign in August. There are some smaller openings, but nothing really on the all-audience blockbuster scale. And so the way that these films hold are going to determine whether or not the summer season hits the $4 billion mark, and that was the norm pre-COVID, and it has only been able, and the box office has only been able to surpass that milestone once since COVID. And so for the next few weeks, that's really what the industry is going to be watching, whether or not we can get over that number.
Rebecca, I say it every week, but we are so grateful for you for doing all this counting and giving us the context on these great numbers. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. The Shards premieres Wednesday on FX. It's the latest soapy story to revolve around beautiful people from Ryan Murphy Productions. The show seems primed to capitalize on all the 1980s nostalgia out there. The Daily Show is looking back on 30 years with a limited edition podcast series, 30 effing Years, The Daily Show Remembers. It'll be hosted by the show's current news team. My colleague Ethan Schanfeld had the scoop. And get ready to learn even more about Alex Earl. The buzzy podcaster and host will be the focus of the unscripted series Earl Meets World, which will chronicle Earl's life as she builds on a multitude of business opportunities. It's produced by Ben Winston and will debut September 4th. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Ryan Murphy. The prolific creator and showrunner will receive the Norman Lear Creative Conscience Award at Variety's annual Showrunners Breakfast in Los Angeles on August 14th. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Rebecca Rubin. Sticks, snicks, hick picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.